family. So welcome to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this session that we call Sex, Lies, and Compromise. My name is Errol Williams, and you will see on your screen, if you can see her, which is Denise Christie. She will be helping me to host tonight's session, so you'll hear from her in a moment. And we have the Right Honorable Sister Vean Torto. We're glad to have her, and she will be talking to us tonight. So without further ado, as I said before, tonight is really about this topic that we have put on. We will break it down into around 4 areas, and Denise is going to start off the ball rolling. So I'm going to hand over now to Denise, and she will take it away from here, and I'm going to be showing my screen. So I'm going to show a screen shot. So go ahead, Denise, and I will show the screen when you're ready.
Well, hi, it's good to have you all here joining with us, and we're going to be directing many of your questions and our questions to Vean, our guest speaker. As if you looked at our link when you registered, it was about sex, lies, compromise, and several other subjects. We're going to start off with our first topic, which you should be able to see on the screen. We should be sharing it with you. And it's about a man's love. And what is the effects of an absent father to his son and his personal relationship. So if there's any of you men out there who know about single parenthood without fathers, please send in your questions. As for Vean, we know that Vean, what about the effects of an absent father on his daughter? You can fill us in on that side of the scope. So if you'd like to give us your opinions and your experiences on having an absent father as a daughter.
Okay. Well, I'm one of 6 children. It's 4 girls and 2 boys, so it's a really female-dominated household. Not having a father, it just meant that everything regarding a man, a fatherly love, was sourced outside of the home. It might have been via uncles, it might have been pastoral care at church, even teachers at school, but that covering, that someone looking out for you just wasn't at home. When you've got brothers, so they were older than me, but you know, they're a good 10 years plus older than me. They're doing their own thing. So they were like protective, but they weren't able to show that kind of like guidance or to be able to look out for me in a way that a dad would. So for me, it was about when it was coming to find that fatherly love, I looked for it outside, and that pushed me into relationships where I kind of felt it was being offered to me. I didn't know what it was meant to feel like, though I didn't know. I saw it in my friends. I remember being at Brownies once, and the little girl said, "Oh, my dad said I make the best cup of tea in the world." I remember feeling so envious of her, that she had a father that even could say such a thing to her. Something simple like that, having a father to say, "Oh, you're my little princess." So the minute a guy outside would say such a thing to me, it was like, wow, it's something just clicked on in my head, like, wow, this person thinks I'm something, thinks I'm amazing, you know, not just a sister or a daughter, but they're seeing me in a different way that no one else in my home has seen me. So it made me very needy. And once you get a taste of a man giving you that kind of, switching that light on in your head, you don't want it to end, because it's something that God created us to have. It's something that we obviously need, otherwise we wouldn't have fathers. So a lot of us females that didn't grow up with a dad, we're looking for it wherever we can get it, and it's very easy for us to be enticed by a sweet tongue or a compliment. And that was my scenario, and that was, you know, for me, for much of my teenage years and early 20s.
Okay, as for the effects of an absent father to his son, was any of the relationships that you had with men or boys who did have an absent father? And if so, do you think that affected their relationship towards you?
definitely. I mean, even with my my first marriage, my husband, his dad was absent in it, but I could see the way that he treated me was so much like how his absent father kind of treated his mum. So though he had him, but he wasn't in any kind of aspect of an excellent role model. And I definitely was the recipient of that kind of the absent father effect on him. I think they're experimenting. When it's like you're just watching on TV, you see the Cosby Show. Oh, that's a father, that's a dad. You watch movies, you see it on the street. But if you're not learning about it at home, you know, my children are learning about things from little kids. Like they have their dad saying, you know, you're amazing. My son copies his dad, wants to wear his dad's shoes and trainers. If that father's not in your home from that young age, it's like, who do you emulate? So it's your first person. So if it's a negative person, well, that's what you're going to be. And that's a lot of times what you're going to project and put out in your relationship. So definitely for me, and especially even in my first marriage, I saw the effects of that.
Okay. You got anything to add there, Errol?
Yeah, I just wanted to look at the effects that it's had on the sons, because I was in that position, and I've done a lot of work with prisons, especially Feltham Prison, and I remember doing one session on the role of a father, the role of a man, and I remember there was around 14 men, young men there, and I remember asking them to stand. Whoever had a father living in their home, please stand. And only 2 people were able to stand out of the 14. And the impact of fatherlessness to sons is amazing, in fact. I can't really for sure say what the effect has been on me. It's really hard to detect that. But I went through quite a lot of negative experiences, just like those guys in prison did. And I could say it had a lot to do with you know, being an absent father. I've never had a father living in my house. In fact, my father left my mother before I was born. That's how bad it was. He had 2 women pregnant at the very same time. So I have a sister that's the same age as me, if you like, from another mother. So the impact is drastic. And I would, Vean, I'll probably throw this back at you. I would probably say that the impact on the sons is probably the same as the daughters, but probably the role may play out differently in life, whereas a lot of guys end up in prison, they end up in drugs, whereas girls may not necessarily end up in the same particular light, but probably bad enough anyway. I don't know what you think about that. Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, obviously I can only speak from a female perspective, but I've done prison ministry as well. And when you hear the guy speaking, it's heartbreaking. And a lot of times it does all, you know, go right back to the home, you know, and looking for that camaraderie that you get from gangs, from other men. And, you know, they even like with gangs, you saw, you know, you have leaders, you've got the top guy, the top shotter, and everyone kind of aspiring to kind of be as close to him as possible. I think, you know, if you had a strong, I'm not saying that guys that have fathers in their home don't go down that road, but a lot of it's really sad that for when guys, that's their father figure. That's who they're seeing as, like, that's where they're seeing strength. That's where they're identifying like substance, and, you know, they can't see the tenderness, you know. They don't know the tenderness of a father. They don't know how to show their emotions, because they just think, you know, to be a man, you got to be tough, you got to be arrogant, you got to be wrong to women, because they haven't seen it at home, and they're just getting it from the street, and it's a warped ideal. It's a dangerous ideal, and it only creates victims. And you've seen it in the prisons, I've seen it in the prisons. I've had partners in prisons that I've gone to visit, and to be honest, did they have a father present? No. So, you know, I think it's definitely like what happens. It's definitely what happens. Okay. But it just plays out differently for sure.
Yeah.
I think also the effects could be that, well, there's no no instruction, no guidance, no. It's harder for a woman to tell a boy how to grow into a man because she doesn't have those experiences.
Yeah.
So when the father's missing, the son misses out on that kind of leadership, that kind of direction. It's not to say that his life will not be any good because he's missed out on it, but it does have an effect. And sometimes it's harder for, I think, where it comes to a man's love, it's harder for the son to show the emotions, seeing it through a male perspective if he's only had a woman's view of that. So in the direction of watching their father loving the mother, if that's missing, then it will have an effect on how they love in future with women.
Yeah, I agree.
It may not always be a bad way, but in most cases, it's not always a good thing when they haven't had the direction and instruction from a father.
Definitely. I agree with you, Dee. I mean, you know, I've never raised, my little boy is small, but obviously you've raised a son. So you're speaking from, you know, your experiences, and that just totally makes sense. Without a dad, how, you know, who's going to teach them certain things? Did you have to teach your son like things like shaving, or did your brothers take that role? You know, just basic things like that.
Yeah, well, luckily for my son, he's got uncles. He had a grandfather that was prominent in his life for the early stages. And yeah, there's male figures around him, godparents and so forth. But it's difficult with, if none of that is around, it will be more difficult for the son to know a true how a man's love should really be.
Yeah.
Well, just to say, if anyone has any questions on the subject or any other question whatsoever, do put them in the chat room so we can pick those up. Thank you very much.
Well, I think we can move on to the next topic, which is looking for love in the wrong places. So is it a result of a missing father's love? So this is connected to what we were just speaking about. Do we think that that people find love, are looking for love in the wrong places because they've missed out on their father's love?
Is that to me?
Yeah, how was it for you? Did it have that kind of effect on you? Did you find that you were looking in the wrong places because you were looking to replace the love of a missing father?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. I mean, it's like a double thing in my home. Because there wasn't a father, my mom did everything by herself. So, and there were 6 of us. So her love, though it was 100%, it had to spread very thinly because she had to be the dad and the mum. So she was always there, but there were so many things that I didn't go to her about because there wasn't the time, that she just couldn't be everything to everyone. But she did her best. So, and then you go on to like the emotional love, the romantic love, the love from a father that affirms a woman's values. I certainly went looking outside for that. And as I said earlier, it just takes someone to say the right thing, something that you've not heard before. Not ever being called daddy's little princess or being called beautiful. It's nice when your mum says, oh, my beautiful girl. But when a man says it, it has a different reaction. And if you've got low self-esteem, if you're vulnerable, then it grabs you. And I definitely, and I had older sisters as well. So I was going places, to certain clubs, places that really a 16-year-old didn't have no business being. Then you're exposed to older guys. And then what happens is you're just in this whole new world that once you get in, because it's that love from a man that you didn't have growing up, then you're just in, and you're on this crazy ride that can either, well, most of the time it's going to end up in a negative situation, and you're going to end up thinking, what have I done? This is not how it's meant to be. I'm loving, I'm looking for love, I'm finding it, but it's leaving me more broken, more in despair, more confused. It's leaving me, like, makes you even think, what is it that I'm actually looking for? Because you didn't have it at home. So you're out on the street, a guy's saying the right things to you. You're realizing it's not bringing you or giving you ultimately what you want and what you need. So then you think maybe it's just him. It's the next one. And then you try it again, and it's like the formula, there's no formula. It just keeps failing, and you're just becoming more vulnerable, more used, more worn out. And, just was dad meant I had to find it outside. I did find it what I thought it was, but to no avail, because it started off a cycle that it was only God that helped me to jump off it. You know what I mean?
I know in one of your because you do your blog on Vean's Voice.
Yeah.
There's a statement that you put up about at 16 you was a girlfriend of a violent, charismatic career criminal who threatened you with acid attacks to your face, and you was being what did he say? If I was ever seen by him or one of his boys talking to another man, I was so afraid.
Yeah.
Do you think that you got into that relationship because you was looking for love in the wrong place?
Totally. I mean, when I met him, I was 16 and he was 24. And I met him at a party that was actually being held by one of my sisters, in fact. And he was a notorious name in our part of London. And that actually made it even more kind of, at first I didn't know that was him. I didn't know that's what he was about. He approached me, said nice things to me, and my giddy little 16-year-old naive head just got drawn in and sucked in. He spoke to me, and I started realizing, whoa, like, I'm not used to this. I'm completely naive and green to this, but I like how I'm feeling. He's been very assertive. He's taking control. Before I knew it, I was in that same night, he almost made me kind of promise that I was his girlfriend. And I was partly scared, but partly overwhelmed and partly liking it, because, wow, this is kind of new to me. And that just opened me up to kind of becoming like his property. I would just get random knocks on the door just as was in, not by him.
Okay, I think we've lost Vean for the moment.
Personally. Oh.
Okay, you're back.
I'm back. Okay. Like, Denise, if I was like you and your sisters, the type of father that you had, like, that's like, I would have dreamt to have a father like that in my home. Because in my imagination, I can only speak from, if I had a dad that was like, V, how was your day? V, what's going on? Oh, V, the boys, V, this, V, that. Like, even if I rebelled against it, at least I had it as a foundation. Even in my dark times, even when I was confused, at least I could reflect back to that and say, well, my dad told me, and my dad has shown me a love that this guy can't even emulate in his dreams. But I didn't have that. So whatever wishy-washy, bog standard love was given to me, I lapped it up, because to me, well, I had nothing, to compare it to. If my dad was there when I got home to say, where were you? But my mum she was just so sweet and so lovely, and things just kind of coasted. But if I had that firm dad that gave me that firm love in my head, and I know there's a lot of girls that maybe even listening that say, well, I had that dad and I still done it. I know that does happen. But imagine not having it at all. Like, you can't even imagine not even having it. And so for me, that's what pushed me into the arms of this guy. And when he was threatening me, I didn't feel could be protected. What am I going to tell my sister? I told my sisters and stuff, but I didn't want to tell my brothers. I didn't want to get them kind of involved. And like I said, their lives are so different. But my sisters, what can they do? And then you're a teenager. If a 24-year-old guy, buying you things, telling you to stay at home, I don't know. It's just, it definitely pushed me into the wrong arms, to his arms. Those arms damaged me. Those arms lied to me. Those arms created vulnerability and neediness. And I was scared. But you know what? Did it stop me? After him, there was another one pretty similar. It just opens up the door, basically.
So is that how you think you got into your first marriage?
He was nothing like that guy in the sense of abusive physically. There was no threats like that. With getting into that marriage, a part of why I rushed into that marriage was because I was at that place where I was finding God. I'd kind of returned. I'd left church. I had relationships. I had dated. They had failed. I was more broken. I had partied. I had drunk. I'd done it. So when I met him, I was like, hey, this one's not the criminal. This one he's got his career going on. He's very confident. You know, I was always attracted to the most confident, the most, if there was a group, I want the leader. I need the main one. Like, that was my preference. That I just wanted to know that I had that one that was going to look after me. I always wanted just to be looked after. And with my first marriage, he ticked a lot of those boxes. But his abuse, it was just more that he was, you know, more like a cheater. He was someone who would make me feel terrible about myself because he would knock my appearance, or, you know, or openly tell me that he was attracted to someone in a jokey way, but still in a way that it would make you feel kind of, you know, give you that kind of anxiety. And when you find out he's cheating because your thing's turning up in your relationship, that really messes you up. But because I was returning back to God, I was like, I didn't want to leave him because I knew we were living in sin. So I was like, instead of backing away, I rushed into a marriage with him. So then my point was going to be with this one is that, yes, it was my past that got me to get married when I did. But because I was seeking God, I knew I couldn't live in sin with him anymore. And instead of me walking that walk to God alone, I felt like I had to take him with me. And the only way I could take him with me is if we were married. And he weren't really ready for marriage, but he still wanted to keep me too and make me happy. Right. So we went into this marriage, and I thought, yeah, well, now I can come to God and I can sing, I can do what I've got to do before God. But really, God didn't tell me to carry him. God was calling me, but I dragged him into my next stage, that neediness again, and not trusting God that he would have that Christian husband for me further down my journey. I was like, no, I've got one now, God, and I want to take him with me. I didn't want to start again. I'd invested so much. I'd been so battered in that relationship emotionally. I was like, I'm not starting again with someone new. But as quick as it started, is as quick as it unraveled. And kind of God showed me that I didn't call him, I was calling you. And so that's how I got into that marriage.
Okay. You got anything else to add, Errol?
Yeah, there's 2 points really. I think I want to come up to a point that you made, Vean, which is a very sad point, in fact, really, really sad, and I think all men should hear it. But first of all, I want to make this point that I remember when I was around, I think I was 20, in fact, when I had my first child. So I was not 16 or 17. And I remember having Samantha in my hands, my eldest daughter, and didn't have a clue what to do. I remember thinking to myself, my God, this is not a doll. This is a real live baby. What do you do next? You know, and I remember that. But the point I wanted to pick on, actually, that you made, which is very, very sad, you relate to the point that Denise had a father at home who could, you know, question her and check on her and so on. And the fact that you did not have that was such a major impact. Are you following me? And that's the case with a lot of young ladies out there. They don't have that, let's call it, that reference point then. Mother has done as best as she can. And in some cases, mothers may well have provided that reference point. But in a lot of cases, not having that father to give you that affirmation, let's say, is a very sad picture. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I did have a question, Denise, that someone has asked. I don't know if I'm going to put up on the screen. Someone asked a question which is not relating actually to this, but we did say we would take questions. So Can you see the question on the screen? I'm going to read it out. It says, my question is probably for couples. And maybe Vean, you could answer this. How do you compromise one Christian life with an unsafe husband? I.e., what do you do if your spouse asks you to stay at home on occasion instead of going to church? That's a good one.
What happened with me when I got married the first time, for one, I'd come from a Christian background. He hadn't. In fact, if he wrote it on paper, he would have said Muslim, but he wasn't practicing, if you know what I mean. And I remember when God called me, I remember being in my bed in that house, and I was so low, like so low. And my mum had always said to me, "V, I know a bishop's church local to you. You should go." And I wasn't interested at that point in going back to church. But when it got really bad, I remember one Sunday morning calling my mum, saying, "Mum, can I have the address of that church?" And I started going to this church. And when I tell you, it was like, it was just what my soul needed. It's what my life needed. And I became like, I was there morning service, evening service, like any chance I could get into that church, I would go. And my husband at the time, who is a bit of a joker, he would see me going, like getting my stuff ready to go again. And he'll be like, are you turning into say to me, you turning into a priest or something? Like he'll just be like, what's up with you in this place? Like, why do you always have to go? And he was I could see he was kind of threatened by it. He was kind of afraid of it because he saw what it was doing to me. It was, making me be stronger. It was making me it was showing up our divisions a lot more. He never told me to stay at home. And the question has said, what would you do if your spouse asked you to stay at home? But he never asked me to. But for me, even if he had, I'm quite a stubborn person. It wouldn't really have made any difference because if I found God and I was going, and I think as a woman, if you are married, yes, you have to, your husband comes first. The Bible says, you have to listen to him. He's the head of the home. But see, for me, that it wouldn't be going down. I would be going to church. And I don't know. I wouldn't. That's why I just don't advise any woman going with a man that's unsafe, because it's just unnecessary drama that's just going to come up and continually just keep racing its head. Yeah.
I think sometimes what happens, Sister Vean, is that sometimes there are some marriages where they start off as Christians and one may backslide, let's use that term, and therefore makes it very difficult. I think also my take on it as well, because I live with an unsaved wife. I live with an unsaved wife for the last 32 years. She has never ever stopped me from going to church. In fact, she's glad when I'm going to church. She had the house to herself. So it's the other way around for me. But my advice as well, in addition to what you've said, is that as a spouse, you got to use wisdom. And I think you made a good point there in the sense that God is first, your family is second, church comes third. And I would say you got to use wisdom. You got to know when to go and when not to go. And, you got to use wisdom. And I think, sitting down, talking to your spouse and reasoning and coming to some form of negotiation or agreement is a wise thing. If we're going to take the attitude, well, I'm not going to negotiate, I'm not going to talk with you, I'm going to do what I like, when I like, how I like, then you might come up against some major challenges. And I think sometimes it's wise just to sit down, let's talk about this, let's compromise, let's make a decision. But wisdom has to be used here, or else you could end up losing your marriage.
And I think that's the difference, because what I wanted to say, but every story is so different and complicated, and mine is not. It's whatever I say here is completely based on my own experiences. Like, I'm not trying to push it out there for anyone. It's just my walk. But for me, at that point, though I went into that I actually married him because I felt to be a Christian, I couldn't live in sin with him, so I had to get married. Instead of thinking, let me end the relationship, it would have been a lot less hassle. I got married and forced it, even though I knew it really kind of was no good. So for me, if I got to be totally honest, I weren't trying to save it. So even if the whole church thing did become an issue, what was going on in my household at that time, you know what, if it was going to end in divorce, then it was going to end in divorce, because we'd already gone through so much mess already. So where you've had a successful marriage for over 30 years in a similar scenario, I'm sure it's had its challenges, but you know, you're committed to seeing it through, and that's commendable to you. But for me, it was like, you know what, this is a real mess, and I don't know the lifespan of it. But I kind of wasn't, we didn't have any children either. So I kind of felt like this is what I'm doing. You know, this is really what I'm doing, and whatever happens is going to happen. But that's what happened to me. I'm not encouraging anyone to be like that. But for me, I was already kind of done, you know.
Excellent.
Okay. Next one. Okay, from relationship to relationship to relationship, what is the impact on your life? Why is it hard to maintain one good relationship? So what impact did you have, Vean? How was it, did you find yourself going from relationship to relationship? Was you lost in what you actually wanted, or you couldn't find what you wanted, so you moved on? Or did you find that you wasn't settled in any one relationship? And what happened if you did find that good relationship? How did you know that that was the good one?
I think it was not to do with not being settled. It was having low standards to start with. So when I would start a relationship, or, you know, you start dating someone, obviously straight away everyone's putting the best foot forward. And it depends as women as well. We have sometimes this really long list of what we want from a guy, an inner guy. A lot of times not even looking at what we are going to bring to the table. And so we're easily disappointed when we don't get all those boxes ticked in them. And so for me, when I would start a relationship, you'd be on that high, you'd be thinking, oh, this guy's got what I need. For me, like I said, it was all about being looked after. So to me, I'm thinking he's got what it takes to look after me. And then slowly but surely it starts kind of unraveling. And what always was, because I was hungry for marriage, it's almost like I just wanted to be settled down. Because of my Christian background, I knew that it wasn't about just being in a relationship and not committing. So though I was in the world, it was for me that the end result was always that I wanted to get married. So for why mine sometimes didn't work out is because at the end of it, I realized this wasn't serious for them. I was just, I don't know, I was just a girl. They wanted to see me, they wanted to date me, take me out, have me on their arm. But in terms of getting married, they were in no way ready for that. And that's why I encourage so many young girls, don't even start. You need to know what their intentions are for you, because it's just the impact that it's going to have in your life is so detrimental. It's like you don't want to have that baggage when you actually do find the one. You're carrying this big old sack of past issues, past relationships, things that different men have said to you, the arguments, the hurt, the distrust. So for me, the impact is that it's just that had on even my marriage now. My past relationships sometimes still have an impact. Sometimes I have to tell myself, my husband is not them. You know, he's the good one. He is the one that's looked after you and looking after you and loves you from the top of my head to the sole of my feet. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to act. I don't have to always be made up. I don't have to always play like I know what I'm doing. I can be so flawed in front of him, and his love is constant. But I found him eventually. And in that time when I was going from relationship to relationship, I just have to say, if you're a Christian or not a Christian, but it's all about God. It's about having your eye on him and not on the man, because then when your eye's on the man, you can only see in the flesh. You're seeing he looks nice, he's got a nice car, he's got a job. That's not going to be enough. When the storms come and when the problems come, that's not going to be enough. So the problem that I had in keeping relationships is that I was focusing completely on the flesh side of things, and then asking God after I got with them to make it work, to make him commit. But really, my mind should not have been so on it. But I was desperate, I was needy. That came from me not having my dad at home.
Okay, have you got anything to add, Errol?
Yes, I must say it's great listening. I think one point that you said, Vean, which really hit me really hard is the fact that when you go from relationship to relationship, you oftentimes carry those thoughts in your head of the other person. You know, is he better or is she better, or whatever the case might be. And I think that there is that danger that you're picking up different things along the way with different relationships. And I mean, I must say, I've been with June for over 30 years, so I've not had that experience, even though I've had that experience slightly. But it is troubling. And I think one of the things, Vean, that really hits me really hard is why is relationships failing so much in the Black community, especially Caribbean. I was telling you earlier that I had read in the Metro that 76% of single parent families, I'm not sure if it's in the whole UK or if it's in London alone, but 76% are single mothers. And I've been asking myself now for several weeks, why is it so hard to maintain one good relationship? You get into a relationship and somehow it doesn't work, so you go to another one, doesn't work, you go to another one, doesn't work. Why is it not working? And I know that we can't have one blanket answer for every relationship, but there must be some similarities. Some people blame it on slavery. Some people blame it on fatherlessness, not being there. Some people blame it on different things. I don't know what your take would be on as to why it's just not working in a lot of cases. But again, a lot are working, but I don't know what the majority would be, whether the majority are working or not. Divorce is really high among us as well. So it really is an epidemic at the moment. It really is a bad picture I see at the moment.
If I want to take part in this.
Sorry?
No, I think that's somebody's mic is
Oh,
on.
okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's such a big question. And for me, I think that a lot of the times the no father, no marriage examples growing up has a huge part to play in it. It's like you can't, it's not been your norm, it's not been your scenario, it's not been coming home seeing mum and dad, that friendly banter, even the arguments, you know, that's all part of life, that's learning. When my kids see me and my husband bickering, like, it's life. It's not a bad thing. They're learning. They're seeing how people communicate. When we're lovey-dovey to each other, when we're at each other's throats, this is normal. And I think for me, I didn't have a married mum and dad at home, so I knew I wanted it because I felt something was missing, hence searching for it. But I think I'm married to a West African man, and in being married to him, I'm opened up a lot to that culture, Ghanaian culture in particular. But my background is also in the wedding industry, and a lot of clients are Nigerian. And in my West Indian world, I saw way less marriages than I did in my new life as being married to a West African, and then in my previous work. So it got me thinking. I say to my best mate, who happens to be West African as well, like, I knew that both of my husbands are actually West African. And I don't know what it was, even though, okay, my first one ended, but I kind of feel like the desire and the hunger and the commitment to marriage is kind of a bit more, I don't know, it's just a bit more commonplace in the African communities and families than it is in the West Indian. Not to say that it doesn't happen in the West Indian community, but I definitely think there's a huge divide. Pastor, you said about the slave trade. I don't know. I do think there's a big identity crisis, you know, amongst Black people. I think it was kind of hard for men in this country, Black men coming up. My mum would tell me about the teddy boys, how they used to really, you know, go for the Black men. They had a lot of pressure. They had to come into this place and find their feet. I think there's a lot of demasculation that went on, a lot of not even respecting your fellow Black people, because we're kind of all in the struggle together, that kind of going outside of the race to feel that they, you know, could get somewhere by doing it. I don't think it's not, as you said, no blanket statement. It's just so many aspects, but I think it's from broken families, you know, brokenness, the no dad, the mum by themselves, and it just goes from generation to generation to generation. And for some reason, us West Indians have bore the brunt of it, I think, more than West African. But I'm happy to be wrong, but I can only speak from what my eyes have seen, you know. And when I talk about going outside of the race, both my brothers, you know, and my sister even have gone outside their race, and they are children that were born from a broken home, and also that the 60s, that era, you know what I mean? So I don't know, I'm not a sociologist, but I just think that all of these different things have got a part to play in why somehow we just keep missing the link. Within the church, I think obviously you kind of got a better chance, because, you know, though there's a lot of singleness in the church, but hey, I see more marriages in the West Indian community within church than I see outside. Like if I was doing wedding planning still now, I'm being honest, I wouldn't even be trying to go into the West Indian community in particular, because there's no money in it. Like it's the West African, they're getting married, they're doing it, bang, 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 bang. It's like, it's just part of culture. You go to, you grow up, you go to uni, you get married. That's in I go to Christmas at my family, husband's family, all the sisters are married. In my family scenarios now, my sisters, we're married, but there's more unmarriedness, there's more teenage pregnancy. I don't know why, and it could just be my family, because there's a lot of West Indian families that have marriages. They are going all the way in their education, but in my family it wasn't like that. So I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I think it's just a mixture of loads of different aspects that's just piled against us. And hey, now we've got the singleness and the broken families. But I don't know, I'm happy to have the questions from people listening to, or their input, you know, because I'm not sure, I don't have the answer to that. It's too broad.
Excellent. I have a question, Denise. Sister Denise, I'm going to put that up for Vean. I hope you can see it on the screen now. Let me know if you can see it.
Yeah.
I read it. It says, so what do you do when you think you finally find the right relationship, but then has a negative impact on the stepchildren who don't see eye to eye?
Well, I can speak on this because I have a stepson. So when you're saying stepchildren, I'm hoping I'm going to answer the question right. Is it mean that the stepchildren, your children that you already had before the relationship, and then your husband's children, they don't see eye to eye, or the stepchildren and the new wife? I don't know. So I'm only going to speak on what I've experienced, which is that a lot of times when a stepchild sees you coming in, they see you as a threat, unfortunately. And they see you as like, hang on, you know, I've had my single father or single mother to myself for all these years, and we've been doing fine, thank you, and we've had a good setup, and now, you know, you come along, and especially so if you've got children. I didn't have that. I came into my marriage about children, but you know, I can imagine if you come in with children as well, you've got the, you know, the child maybe that's at the home of their other mother, their real mother, their blood mother, and then you've got the woman's children who aren't even the man's children, kind of getting the perks of him. They're seeing him every day, you know, they're getting him, ferrying them around to after school clubs, and it must be hard for that stepchild to see such things. But I'm not going to elaborate on that, because that's not my reality. Is that I had a stepson who, I know it was hard for him at first when I came in to the picture, and it wasn't easy. He's 17 now, so you know, I could say this openly, and I know that he would agree that initially it wasn't easy. Initially it probably was that distrust. Who's this person? Though it wasn't ever like he wanted his mum and dad to get back together. That wasn't the issue. But his dad was his dad, you know, it was all about him and his dad's relationship, and I think I was a threat. Then I started having kids. We were so nervous, especially I've got 4 children now. So every time we had a kid, we were like, oh my God, we don't want it to impact him negatively. We don't want to think that any of these children are taking his place, or, you know, or building our little family and excluding him. But the whole stepchildren scenario, it is hard. And we try our best to include him. But I think, especially he's a teenager at the time, like now, it's like, sometimes he keeps himself out, but we're Christians, and you know, it's a lot better now than it was earlier. And my kids, it's so funny. they ask, where's his mum? Where's his mum? We say, oh, she lives in another house, or where is he? Oh, he's in his mum's house. But the love that they had for him, a lot of times the issue is not even the kids. A lot of the time it's the adults, because my kids, it's like they knew about him in a past life, because they were born and they just knew that he was their brother, and they adore him. He's like a superstar when he walks into our home. And for me, though, I find I'm still like, if I say our relationship on a scale of 100, me and him, there are days when we're like 90, and somewhere like I can feel the distance. But I've said this openly on my blog. I'm okay with that, because you know what? He has a mother. I'm not here to replace her, and he's got a father. And all I want to be is, I'm there if he needs me. You know what I'm saying? I'm an adult, and though I'm not perfect, I'm whole, I'm cool. He's still learning his way. So if I don't mind taking the bruises, I don't mind being the one that's got to move out the way sometimes. I don't mind being the one that's got to, do you know what? Let me give my husband and my stepson some time. You know what? In fact, let me give my husband and the stepchild and my kids some time. Because, they're their own little unit as well, and we're all together. But if he's still got to work through certain things, then I'm happy to let that happen, because, so that's just, sorry if I haven't answered the question correctly, but that's been my reality dealing with a stepchild.
Just before I let Denise come back in, thanks very much for that. Catherine, welcome, and I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Hey, Kat.
Well, I'm going to I'm going to unmute your audio. So if it's, I don't know if there's anything you want to ask Vean yourself. Now that you broke rank and got through, so I decided to leave you there. So I don't know if you want to say anything or ask a question to Vean or Denise. Go ahead.
Hi guys. It's probably more. So I have step siblings now, and I find that they're a lot younger than we are. And I find that the relationship between us and them is a little bit strained, and I tend to wonder if it's something that I need to do, because I'm slightly older than they are. If I need to reach out to them instead of sort of leaving it that my dad should, kind of make way for them to kind of have a relationship with us. What would your advice be in terms of kind of trying as a parent who, you've got your own biological children, but there's also this other child from another parent you don't want to tread on toes, but you also want your children as well as the stepchild to have a relationship, because at the end of the day, they are blood, despite of the relationship between the parents, they are blood. So I find it difficult to reach out to my step siblings, because I'm not sure if I'm going to be treading on toes my own mom and their mom and my dad. It's that triangle, trying to have a relationship with them without having to tread on anybody's toes. What would your advice be?
Do you want me to answer?
Yes, definitely. Definitely, not me.
Kat, what I would suggest is, first of all, I'm a big believer in going with your gut feeling, the Holy Spirit, that leading. Secondly, it's always about the children first, because your dad is a senior man, he's grown. Your mum is a senior woman, she's grown. The older we get, we have got the scars, we have got the t-shirt, we've got the mug, we've got the fridge magnet. The youngsters, they do not have that yet. So they're looking at us. So those of us who've already got the certificate, we've kind of got to take that lead. And you know what, you have to sometimes be uncomfortable. So even if when you reach out to them in love, you don't get it back, you're a woman of God, Kat, I know that. So you've got to be like, you know what, I'm not going to take it as a personal diss or slap in the face. I'm just going to try. And then you see, because once you've done that, you can kind of say, you know what, I have tried. And then, you know what, you can try again. Maybe it might be a birthday party. Maybe it might be Christmas lunch. I don't know. Maybe if you've got a sister, it might be, you know what, let's go and have lunch one-on-one. I think the dangerous thing is, like, when we start thinking about everyone that's involved. You know what I mean? If you and your step siblings, most of the time our parents go before us. So if we're too worrying about our parents, like when they're gone, you guys are not going to have a relationship. My dad was a philanderer. I've got brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, I think in Canada, and in this country, I have, though my mum had 6 of us, I have got an amazing, beautiful younger sister by 4 years. Now, I never forget walking through the high street one Christmas and my mum stopping to talk to this woman. And these women were talking. I didn't know this woman. She had a little girl. My mum was like, "Oh, that's your sister, huh? What do you mean? That's my sister." Yeah. Anyway, years later, so we didn't build a relationship from there. But at 16, she came and asked about us, and we've had a relationship since then. And it hasn't always been easy. Do you know what I mean? Because it's amazing. I look at her face, and I'm like, "That's my face." She laughs. That's my laugh. But we didn't grow up in the same home, and the dad, you've still got your dad that connects you guys. We didn't even have that dad that connects us. So it literally had to be us young girls, 16 and early 20s, deciding how are we gonna play this, because we like each other, but as youngsters it was like, how are we gonna keep this going? And thank God we were all Christians. I wasn't that in it at the time, but she was, and my other younger sister. And they forged a relationship very quickly and were very close, to the point I started to feel left out. But then once I've joined, now it's just so amazing. And we didn't have our parents to push us. We did it ourselves. So I think with you being the elder one, I would just say, Kat, they're your siblings. They got your blood. They are blood to your children. And I would just say, go for it. Don't worry about treading on parents' toes. Be sensitive. Let them know what you're doing. But really, it's a new relationship, and it's your relationship with them. Of course. It's a sibling relationship. So I hope that kind of helps a bit.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Beautiful answer. Denise, you want to take the last one?
Okay, before we move on to the last topic, somebody has sent in a comment say, I agree with what is being said, but being brought up in the old of the church, you are told that you are told to wait. The Lord will send your husband to you. And there was a shortage of men in the church. Sorry. So some of us who are in our 60s and 50s walked outside of the church looking for love, falling into the trap of a failed relationship, and still single, hoping and praying for God's true relationship to come. So there's many who are still looking for love. Or have been directed in the wrong direction, or been told to wait. But with the next topic is sex, lies, and compromise. To have or to have not, bound by lies and making choices out of confusion. Why are people settling for standards that are lower than what is desirable? This can go back to sex, lies, and compromise, being that they have been actually told to wait on the Lord and they have no patience, or they've been waiting for a long time and they're not seeing what is coming, or seeing what they've been told is coming. It could also be keeping up with the Joneses, or biological clock ticking. Are you going to wait? Are you going to go ahead? Are you going to listen to, on a Christian perspective, are you going to listen to the elders telling you to wait on the Lord? Or are you going to go and do what you want to do? Is it because you compromise? Do you compromise with the sex and the lies and everything because you are desperate for love? You're wanting something, you feel that something is missing and it needs to be, the gap needs to be filled. What is your opinions on sex, lies, and compromise? Vean.
Such a big question. But when you are walking outside of God's will in any area of your life, you are compromising, because God wants and already has what's best for you there. Before you were born, it was already lined up. Your giftings, your purpose, his plans, where you were going to be, who you're going to impact and influence, was already lined up. So whenever we decide to be our own, use our own navigation, which is normally based on our flesh, we are walking underneath that promise and we are compromising. We're talking about sex here. So that's like, it's just so deep. You meet someone that, because when you meet the right guy or the right woman, they are such a helpmate to you and every single thing that you do. The business that my husband's in, I have no experience in it whatsoever. Even when we met and I said try and give my opinion, he's look at me and almost think like I wasn't qualified, like who, no one asked you. Now I get phone calls, I'm cooking, oh, expert, can you tell me what should I do in this scenario? What should I do for this scenario or that scenario? And it's like, because we're married now and because I believe that he's who God set out for me, it's like we are just two peas in a pod. It's just like that support, that I don't know, it's just didn't find that in any other relationship that I was pursuing. And me and my husband didn't have a really lovely fairy tale biblical start either. I mean, that's another story. You know, I was leading worship, he was an usher in his church. I got pregnant before we even got married. But I do believe that though we fell, I do still believe that he was the one, because I just can't even explain how the balance just is perfection for me, and based on my past experiences. Going back to that lady who put that question about being raised in the church, I do think the church is kind of responsible for limiting people and almost keeping them single. I know this sounds a bit like what you're talking about, but like church, especially the traditional West Indian churches, like we're very cliquey and clangy, and we just want to stay in our, like the Christian demographic is huge. We are everywhere. They're not just going to be at the annual convention to meet a potential suitor. They're not going to be at the Singspiration. I think that the church, need to almost allow people a little bit. It's not always just going to be the mother of the church that's going to set you up, or the prophet's going to come and say that person that's there is this for you. Like, I think that it's 2016 now, and I do think that people should be, I just think some of the walls, I think that the church walls need to come down a bit anyway, because I think that we're too concerned about what happens under the four walls. But I think that impacts relationships, it impacts people getting single. They feel the man's not in their congregation, under their pastor, under their bishop, then it's almost like, you know, they can't go with that person. I just think there's too many constraints on people. That's a whole other story, but I just wanted to touch on it. But I just think when you're walking outside of God's will, when you're looking for men or women based on the flesh, based on desperation, based on a need, based on a fact to keep up with the Joneses, because you want to have, your friends got married, your sisters got married, you're 40, you want to have a baby, like, you're always going to be walking outside of God's will. You do just have to wait on him and believe the promise that he is taking care of your needs. He knew you before you were even born. That person is waiting for you. And I always say this as well, even if that person is not, if you are truly immersed and you're completely in God's will for yourself and it doesn't happen, you just have to know that that is what God wants for you. Because I'm telling you, if you go and step into something that's not of you, the pain and the backlash that comes because you feel that you want to have it, doesn't matter if God's told me I don't meant to have it, I want it. Okay, fine. But I'm telling you, the backlash and the scars that you are going to end up living with, it's just so not even worth it. You know, my husband, I wrote on my post, he's the balm to my scars. The amount of scars that he has had to soothe because of my disobedience to God growing up. And I do feel some of the pain that we've had in our marriage, it's because of my scars as well. So you just have to know that in all areas of this singleness, in this searching for love, just be in his will. Because whether, I know you might not want to get married at 60, but I just believe, you know what, as long as you're in God's will, you will enjoy it, because it's what his plan was for you before you were even born. How can you tell the maker that you want it to be different? He knows what you need, and he knows what he needs you for as well. But I think that's kind of all I can say on that. It's such a broad topic.
So do you find that people are settling for standards that are lower than what is desirable because maybe the person looks pretty or the person is attractive but doesn't have the full package of everything else?
Definitely.
Or, you know, there may be someone that's the right person for them, but they don't fit into the perception of what they have. So they're compromising with the looks and the outward package rather than what's on the inside.
Definitely. And I think we're all like that as well. I think we're like that. You know, when we go to buy our meat, you know, you don't want to get no piece of meat. If you see a bit of a bruise with now next, even we don't want to get no fruit. That's why they're starting to sell all the imperfect fruit, because, you know, it's just going to get chucked. Nobody wants it. It's like it's not good enough. And I think it's a shame that we are like that. But I was so guilty of that. You know, had to be pretty boys, had to have a nice car, had to have this. What did I get? What did I get out of it? I've got nothing to show for all of that. It's when you just get a deeper relationship with God and you start realizing all of that is just so not important. It is so about what's beneath all of that. It's so about the heart. And as you get older, things change. I don't have the tummy or the, you know, nothing that I had even when I met my husband, let alone when I was young. We just can't focus on them things. Them things is embarrassing as Christians to even focus on them things, because by doing that, we want God to look at our heart. We want God to judge us by the inside, but we want to judge everyone else by the outside. It kind of can't work like that. You know, it's there's a lot of men out there that will probably be like, why am I single? You know, I've got a successful business. I own my own property, this, that, and the other. Why can't I meet anyone? And it might just be, you know what? He's bald. He's a bit overweight. And girls are so fickle now that because they're watching reality TV, everyone's so beautiful, everyone's so gorgeous and got it all together. You almost think, I can't go with that person because he's beneath me. And it's like, no, he's not. He's not beneath you. And too many women, I speak from women, are like that. You know, they want to go with that guy because he's this, because he's that. And I'm like, look at yourself. And I mean that not in a detrimental way, but look at yourself. What are you actually bringing to the table? Before you sort of start, you know, writing off all these potential suitors, you have to think, you know what? You know, what am I actually bringing to the table in this, that I've got the right to write that person off or put myself on a, you know, on a higher level, you know, than that person? I don't know. I can be rambling. I'm rambling on, but I think it's clear that we do look at the outward too much so. And sometimes we end up going for that man that he looks amazing. And then at home, he's knocking us about or he's cheating, because you know what? It's not just us that thinks he's amazing. A load of other women think he's amazing. And he's bought into that. And he's sharing himself around all of us. So I just think this all comes back to God. You have to seek him. Discernment will be, you know, discernment is going to open up so many doors. My first husband, my younger sister, she was such a prayerful girl. She said to me, I don't like him. There's something about him. He loves himself too much. But I was so giddy-headed and in the flesh. I just went gung-ho. You know, she saw it. So I think that just comes from praying. We just, as Christians, sometimes we get mixed up in the issues of the world and the problems of the world. They don't need to be ours. They don't even need to come in our conversations, because if we were just doing what God said and doing his will, we wouldn't even need to be having these kind of conversations. But I know we're humans, and, you know, we're not perfect, but I think it all goes back to God. I really do. It all just goes back to God.
Okay, we're coming to the end of the session, but what do you think are the lies that are the ones that bound people and cause confusion? What do you think? What is your opinion of those lies that trap people into that state of mind?
Could you repeat that question?
The lies that are binding, that cause confusion. What do you think those lies could be that cause the confusion to get people into this state of mind of compromising and
I think it's low self-esteem. I think it's not knowing your value. It's not knowing your worth. They're all lies. They're all, you know, they're all chains that we just get ourselves completely tangled up in. If you knew who you were as a child of God, if you knew who you were as a human being, as a woman, as a man, if you knew what value that you were, you know, if you really valued who you were when you looked in the mirror, you wouldn't really be making these kind of mistakes. It's the lies of the enemy telling you that you're nothing, that you are not beautiful, that you are not like her, that you are not like him, that you will never have this or that you will never have that. Sometimes it just makes us grab at things that we don't actually need, because we think that if we grab it, then suddenly I'm something, then suddenly I've got it now. I mean, I know growing up in an old school West Indian church, you know, I remember seeing you, my sister was sitting behind this girl once in a convention, and she had been recently married, and the way kind of like she was trying to kind of flaunt her ring and that, because it was almost like, hey, I got a man, I got a husband. And we sort of laughed at each other because we kind of clocked that straight away, that that's what she was doing. And it made me quite sad, even at a young age, that, wow, is that really kind of what we need to be somebody? We need to have that ring. We need to have, you know, like, is it really the way that it's gone? You know, that we would, to have a woman that's got a man, a husband is more valuable than a woman that hasn't. I think it's really sad. And then it ends up being then a woman that has a child then is less valuable than a woman that has a child. It's like the measures are never going to end, you know. It's just, and it's because we're looking at the world as our standard. We're looking at the world as our measure, instead of just seeing, you know what, I don't have a husband, but I'm breathing. I don't have children, but I, you know, I'm loved by many. You know, I may not have it. I may not have it all by the world's standard, but I'm a child of the King, wonderfully and fearfully made. Like, we just keep believing the world for, like, as our book, as our manual of life, but it isn't. It isn't. I'm who God said that I am, and that's with a husband, and that's without. That's with children, that's without. That's even with a career, that's without. I'm already whole, and everything on top of that is a bonus, and that's if God wants it to be for me. That's all I can say on that.
Okay, Corinne says, this is true. It's about the heart. Thank you for this session and appreciate you sharing part of your life experiences and time. And Michael says, yes, it does hurt when we make mistakes, but I guess we learn a valuable lesson and do better. Errol, have you got anything to add as you close out?
Well, I know we're a bit running over time, but I did say from the beginning we may run over. And if anyone has to go, we want to say thank you for coming, and you can. But I just feel to myself that we can go over a little bit more. But I'd love to hear from Catherine on this subject, sex, lies, and compromise. I don't know if you have a question or comment that you'd like to make, or also, Catherine. Because you're here, Catherine, as one of our guests, we might as well take advantage of you while you're here. So, yeah, I don't know if there's a thought, you know, this is a big subject, sex, lies. It's a massive one. I'll tell you one thing I noticed as pastor before Catherine come in. One of the things I noticed about as being a pastor at the moment is I've been a pastor now for over 10 years, just over 10 years. And I could almost count on one hand the amount of weddings I've done. It's just absolutely amazing. But it would take me many, many hands to tell you how many baby dedications I've done. So there's a lot of sex going on outside of God's will. And I go back to a point you made, Vean. Anything below God's standard is a compromise. I love that point you made. It's a compromise. So there's less marriages taking place, but there are more children still being born. There's a lot of baby dedication, not just in where I am, but all over the place. And it's hurting people. It's hurting people. It's hurting the man. It's hurting the woman. You mentioned, Vean, and I didn't put this up. You mentioned about, you know, soul ties. And I think someone once mentioned, everyone you sleep with, there's a part of them stays with you. And stays with you for a very long time. I don't know what your thoughts is, Catherine, or if you have a comment or a question that you'd like to make. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do agree with everything that Vean has mentioned, and it is true that a lot of times, especially for women, it is to do with, you know, self-esteem, how they grow up. You know, I have a daughter, and, you know, thank God we've got a son now who's 9 months. And just even at this young age, looking at both of them, it is kind of starting to make me see a lot of things that can happen or can happen to us as when we are children, how we're instilled our self-worth. And I find that sometimes it could be that maybe if you try to see back, where is this, you know, self-esteem coming from? Or, you know, where is there a sense of pride, like what was mentioned earlier, that people tend to feel like they need to go to what is beneath them. And I find that, for, you know, speaking for myself, I thank God for my husband, and I just think it's by, God's divine connection that my husband and I came together. But over time, I have actually come to see that it has a lot. I had very low self-esteem to the point that I actually went the other way. I didn't want to be involved with anyone because I just didn't think I was good enough. But because I've been raised in a very strict Christian African family, I was also very afraid of, ever being involved with somebody and then something goes wrong and shaming my parents who were ministers. I just felt, there's a lot of pressure that comes in, especially if you're raised in a Christian family. There's so much pressure that for some children, they just go the other way. They get, bad influences that end up in a place where they don't want to be. But I think the whole idea that we're not supposed to talk about sex as growing up in, African or West Indian families, that's just something that we don't talk about. And I was watching a documentary some months back talking about how even in England, white families also don't talk about it. It's not an English thing to sit there with your child and talk about sex and talk about boys and girls, and it's just not done. As a result, you're sort of left in this sea of lies to just find your way, and a lot of the time mistakes happen and people find out the wrong way. By God's grace, some people do land on, they listen to God and God directs them. But I think even as parents, it is not something, I've been praying to God how eventually I will talk to Olivia Jane about sex, how my husband is going to talk to Anthony about sex. Those lies have to be tackled. God has made us into a family for a reason. And the more the mistakes keep happening, that, people having children out of wedlock, there's a lot of single parents, that pillar that you need both mum and dad to advise and bring their children in a way that they understand about these lies, where, girls are getting the love that they should get from their fathers instead of going out there and getting it from a man thinking that this is the sort of attention that they need when really it isn't.
Yeah.
I think for me, it has brought to life when I saw this this conversation was going to happen. I was very keen to get involved in it because I think that I believe that God is empowering me to learn all I can for when my daughter and my son get to an age where I need to speak to them about these issues. So it is a good thing to be doing this, but to the core of me, I just believe that we need to stop being so sheltered about talking about sex and talking to our children. This culture thing has to be broken, that it is a bad thing to talk about it.
Definitely.
So I just think that that's something that needs to be, we need to try and, as a new generation, we need to just try and break out of it. That it's not like a forbidden fruit. They don't look at it like, they need to understand the reasons for it. Everything God has made, he has made it with a purpose and a reason, and sex needs to be sort of stop being looked at as if it's such a worldly thing, such a sinful thing that is done outside. It isn't. They need to understand it's God made, and he makes it, to put union between two people. And I've been married for 10 years now, and there are times I'm at work and I'm thinking about something, and Ken will ring me and say, oh yeah, I was thinking about this. It's because our spirits are joined as one. And that is the purpose why God puts two people together and puts that spiritual union as well as a physical union together. So maybe if people were to understand the reasons why sex is there to be enjoyed in the setup of a family, maybe people will value it more and not sort of use it so flippantly and, it's kind of something very precious that is used for all the wrong reasons, I think.
Excellent.
I totally agree, Kat.
Yeah. I'm going to come at you. We're going to try and wrap up in a moment. I'm going to give everyone a minute or so just to any final thought. But I just wanted to make a point in regards to what you said, Catherine. I'm so glad that you're here, and you look like someone that we need to talk to that can also be part of what we're doing. But just to share with those of you that are listening, Singles Direct is a project that Denise and I started on the 21st of July. It's nothing to do with church. It's just something that we are doing personally. And one of the things that I see and we see going forward is that the more we talk about subjects like this, the better it's going to be for a lot of people. And so there will be conferences, there will be other things that we intend to put on, whether it be in a hotel or different places, etc., for people to come together and talk about these things. Not just single people, but our main target is single people, and see how we can assist and help single men and women to actually, discover their purpose, develop their potential, and also release the power that God has given within them. That's the reason why we're in the process of building singlesdirect.net. Hence the reason why we have dedicated Thursday night to putting on webinars like these, or some of them will be based around personal development and so on. So thank you very much for coming on board tonight, Catherine. For some reason, we decided to leave you there, and for some reason, but we're going to just give everyone 2 minutes to say your final thoughts. But this is not the end of the road. This is just the beginning, the ongoing. But I just wanted to make a point. I'm going to start with you, Catherine. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to close off, and then Vean, then Denise, and then myself, and then we close out in 10 minutes. But I just wanted to say this is a writing that I thought was very powerful, and I'm very impressed with this, Vean. And I think there are so much points in this which are so powerful that I don't think we have time to probably go through the whole lot. I've left it up here hoping people would read it. But there's one part in it that after more soul ties, it's the third paragraph, after more soul ties and more bold-faced lies, you realize that in fact he or she wasn't the one. Are you enjoying this? Where are you actually headed? And that's a very, very powerful question, Vean. And I think these are questions we have to ask ourselves. But you know what's so interesting? Sometimes people, this is one thing I've discovered, is that people are eating the cake before they buy it. The principle is, if you understand what I'm saying. In other words, people are trying out the merchandise before they get married, and so on. And then what tends to happen in a lot of cases, people end up getting hurt because it didn't work out, or the marriage didn't go ahead. And I've heard a lot of women say to me, guys, the lies that they've told, the way that they have pressured them into it, like, if you love me type of thing, you would do this, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of compromise going on. A lot of people are falling into the enemy's traps and are being engulfed. But just take a minute or two, Vean, before you finish your 2 minutes, and just talk about what you have here. I don't know if there's one key point you want to bring out of this, and then just take a minute or two, and then we're going to give you a closing mark in a moment after Catherine. So go ahead.
Okay, to talk about this, some of what I wrote here. I'm really passionate about young women and girls not walking the path that I have had to walk, or that I chose to walk. So I believe it's all about choices. Yes, I didn't have a dad. Yes, he wasn't there, but I had choices. I wasn't forced to do anything that I've ever done. But I never had, as Kat said, and I was like, this is so true. My mum never ever spoke to us about sex. I learnt it all via Just 17 magazine, and I went to an all-girls school, and we would sit in classrooms, and then that's a whole other thing as well. I want my daughters to go to an all-girls school, but for me, I don't think it worked, because it made men even more taboo. It made them even more amazing. And at the end of school, we'd all be in the toilets putting makeup on because there were going to be boys outside. It was like, it made them even more like they were this different thing that you had to kind of just almost prepare yourself for. It just became just a bit too extreme. The way that my girls, rumble and tumble with their dad. And I'm like, I honestly asked my best friend when I first got married and my daughter's relationship with their dad, I would sit and stare at them interacting. as though this, because it was so alien to me, I'm not exaggerating, I would look at their interaction and be like, sometimes I'd actually think it's weird, because I'd never had it, and the only interaction I knew between men and women was when you started dating them, you started going out with them, and that kind of romantic. But this pure love between a father and a daughter, I would honestly sit and be mesmerized by it, because it was so alien to me. But I wrote this piece in my blog to sort of just ask that question. It's like, come on, ladies, come on, men. You know, I mean, especially when you've done it a few times, you know that person's no good. You know that, and when I say no good, I'm not attacking that person, but you know that person is not going to be your forever husband or wife. You know that they may not be saved. You know that they've got viewpoints that are going to be contradictory to your own. Why are you going down that road again? Is it some vague hope that this is going to be different? No, you know it's not going to be different. You know, there's a saying that I always like, and it's like, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And there's, you know, if you're so used to that kind of guy, when they come along again, you know, you already know where it's going to head. And so I was just encouraging the women to look at themselves, get a mirror, hold it up to yourself, and speak to yourself and ask yourself the question, like, where are you heading? You know, what you're lying to yourself. You know he's not the one. I've had single friends ringing me up, asking about this guy, asking me about that guy, and I used to sit there listening to them, thinking, God, am I going to give them the answer that's going to be nice for them, or am I going to give them the answer that's really maybe going to end our friendship? But there are times when I had to just call it as it is and say, this is just, you're getting nowhere. You're going nowhere. It's really time to forget this now, because I don't know how many more phone calls I'm going to get with you asking me about another guy you've met. I'm at the receiving end of the phone calls, and I can already tell you that it's not going to work. So I wrote this. It was a bit harsh, but it was just like, come on now, stop kidding yourself, stop lying to yourself. Just be honest and be truthful, because the minute we start doing that, I'm telling you, if we just did that, we would just avoid so much pain. If I was honest enough to say that I shouldn't have married my first husband, I wouldn't have a divorce against my name. But I just lied to myself to do what my flesh wanted, to tick boxes, to look like I had it together, and look like I was doing the right thing. But if I was just honest and took the fallout and just ended a relationship, I would never have been divorced. So that's that.
No, thank you very much for sharing that and for explaining that. That is very, very good. I do appreciate that. Catherine, I'm going to start with you, and just 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes maximum, so we could close out shortly. I don't know, just your final thoughts of what you've heard tonight. Just your final thoughts, and then we're going to go over to Vean and Denise.
Yeah, I think it's a very good thing that what you and Denise are doing. It's sort of, you have to try and start a ripple of change somewhere. So when God puts something in your heart, you don't know what direction it's taking you, or the people that he connects you with. There are some things that Vean said to me over 5 years ago that even today, they're still ringing in my head. Like, I think it's when her daughter was quite young, the first one. And I remember me complaining that Olivia Jane wouldn't sleep. And she was at my church, and he said to me, Kat, she's 7 and I still pat her back to go back to sleep. You just have to be a mum and just get on with it. So you don't know what small statement or small words you might say to somebody that will be a ripple of change in their lives, and then they will affect other people. I think this forum, what you guys are doing, I think it's an excellent place. And I think I'm glad to have seen it on Vean's post on Facebook that you were doing this today. Because, I believe that there is something that will come from someone, it could be from you guys or somebody else, that will impact and empower us to be able to avoid our next generation of men and women to be, to have a better impact in the world. So I'm glad to be part of it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you made it through the system somehow. I don't know how you did it, but you did it well. Vean, your parting word for tonight.
Okay. I just want to speak to, I don't know who's listening or where you're at in your life, or in your singleness, or in your relationship ships. I just want to encourage you that you are already whole. As long as you have God as a center of your world, you are already whole. And anything that is going to come to you, if it's of God, it's going to enhance your life and flourish you and take you to another level. If you have to search for that thing, that light in you, in someone, it means you need to go back to God, and you need to connect yourself back to Him first, because anyone else is just going to be an addition. You really should be switched on and confident when you look in the mirror, not feeling that without that ring on my finger, without that child, without that job, then I'm not anything. I just want you to know that you already are that someone.
Yes.
I want you to know that people like myself, and you've probably gone through things that I've not gone through, and we don't just go through it for ourselves. I do not believe that I had relationships with men before my husband, got married before I had another battle with infertility. I didn't go through that just for me. I went through it, and I'm wearing my scars so that I can impact the next generation. So don't feel like if you've heard it from someone like me, or your pastor, or your mum, your auntie, don't feel like you need to test it out yourself. Take the advice, because I wish I had someone telling me the stuff that I now openly throw out there. I wish that I had someone telling me that the grass isn't always greener, or to stop envying. When I couldn't have kids, I envied any woman that had a child, like, till it would just depress me. So take advice and run with it, and see it as like your get out of jail card. You're bypassing certain things that other people already gone through. I don't need to be a slave to know that slavery existed. Like I read it, I can see it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, just don't put chains on yourself that you don't need to have. And I just want you to know you're already whole. God's got you, and whatever is for you, as my mum says, cannot be for you. It is out there, but it's going to come via your creator, because He created you, and He also created everything that's going to go with you. And that's all I can say, really.
Well, I think I just wanted to tag along on a point you made, and I think I'm trying to remember if it was Oprah Winfrey that made a point similar. And I think the point I really want to take away from what you said is you are already whole. You don't need someone to make you whole. You're already whole. I think that's a powerful point. Sister Denise, over to you.
Well, I think it's pretty amazing that Vean is taking the time out to share her very personal experiences to enlighten and encourage others, and to, in some cases, help to prevent them from making the same mistakes. And there's something that she's actually put up on her Facebook from Vean's Voice, and I'm going to leave you with this. It says, watch others only to be inspired, not to end up uninspired by your own progress. Your success does not recede as they climb higher. Instead, let it motivate you to see what is attainable. They will have a time to shine, and so will you. Stop tripping and tying yourself in knots. Relax and enjoy your journey. You are both going places, but the destinations are different. So we all have a journey. We all have a place to go. We've all got a destination. And with the likes of people like Vean, who are sharing their experiences, it can help us to get to our destinations more smoothly, and to encourage us to not make the same mistakes, or even to teach us things that we don't know. So as one sister to another, and it's very encouraging to know that she can open up her heart and her life and her personal experiences to everybody, that we can share with your experience and learn from your mistakes and your truths and your experiences, and hopefully it can guide us and help us along the way, along with the guidance of God in our lives.
Amen. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Just before I go, thank you, Denise. Just wanted to share I hope you can see my screen. This particular video here if you go to singlesdirect.net, then you will see this video, and it's a very, very powerful video, in fact, by Creflo Dollar. I think it's really, really powerful. What it talks about is make sure you're asking lots of questions. Ask lots of questions while you're dating. I thought that was really, really, really powerful to do. My mouse is stuck, so I'm going to probably try and see if I could change the battery around. But I would advise everyone actually to watch that video. I think that video is really, really powerful. I've watched it several times, and I must say it's really made me laugh. I think you've watched it as well, haven't you, Denise?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really is amazing. I want to just share one last slide with you, but I can't get my mouse to work. But I want to say thanks to, first of all, to Catherine for coming. Really do appreciate you coming and participating in the way you've done. And I'm sure that Denise will be contacting you very, very soon. I want to thank all of our guests who came along. Quite a few people came online. More people will actually watch this video after because of where we will put it, more than what came. So hopefully we will get some response on that. And also, I want to say big up to Vean. And I want to say something, Vean. I made a note of this earlier. Didn't get a chance to say, Ghanaian men are very good men. So I had to get that one in, actually, because I always say the first African country that I visit, I will assume that's where they kidnapped me from. And it was Ghana, and so in fact the Atumfu Ozitutu, the second, used to work for us, for me and the back down in Stonebridge, and he's now the king of the Ashanti tribe in Ghana. So I'm very much familiar with Ghana. And Denise have been over there. Denise, I've met the king. Did she tell you, Vean?
She didn't tell me, but I did learn when we were discussing this webinar, and I was actually really surprised. So yeah.
Yes, yeah, we went to see the Atumfu, and she was there. I also just wanted to close out on this. I do 2 webinars every week, Mondays for the church and on Thursday for Singles Direct. And we're offering anyone an opportunity, obviously, if they want to sponsor, what we do. Is really quite expensive, actually, running the website, running these webinars. But if anyone wants to, support through donations, then they are more than welcome to do so. And just have to go to the website, singlesdirect.net / donations and so on, or contact me. But ladies, I am honored to have been with 3 beautiful ladies, Denise, Vean, and Catherine. I want to say big up to you guys. Thank you again, Vean, for choosing to come. We certainly would love to have you back, and we'll be back again with something once a month. So what I do, basically, I do a lot of teachings on a Thursday, but then probably once a month we will have someone that we would either interview or share with, and so on. So again, I want to say thank you all for coming. Appreciate you being here, and have a fantastic night tonight.
Thank you.
For what's left of it. And give our regards, Vean, to your husband, and tell him we thank him for releasing you to come and share with us, because obviously, you're all the four. And Catherine, I'd love to talk to you again sometime. And Denise, I'll see you soon. So,
and see you then.
See you guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.